any in the fridge. There's those two different kind of canned drinks.
Look and see what is in there.
Are we streaming?
Yep.
All right, we're streaming.
They been in there.
Cadence, you're live. Just to let you know. All right, so welcome everybody. Thursday night edition, Hands and Feet Fellowship.
They get it right.
Good evening.
Yeah.
My name is Frank Johnson, and I'm missing Abraham Lawrence. Anyway, no, we're gonna have outreach Saturday, and everybody in this room is gonna be there, I'm sure. 11 o'clock Saturday, if you want to come down and help us. I did talk to Nick last night. He's working Saturday that he cannot, but Amber said that she certainly might with her and the girls. She's checking the schedule, but she would like to. So I think Amber and the girls may show up, so that would be wonderful. And it's nice that we have a good relationship with Amber too, because you know what, she's a sweet, very sweet lady. And that's just a great family actually. Very, very nice people. I was at Bessemer City last night, and they looked just about like this right here when I first got there. They did end up with a few more people by the time it was over. I don't know why. They had a late arriving crowd, and we probably had maybe, let's say there might have been 20 people there by the end. So that was really good. But churches are struggling to just get people to come to church. When I walked in there, I was asking David. I was like, "Where is everybody?" He goes, "You tell me, and we'll both know." You know, I don't know. I mean, you know. So just the way it is. And I told him, I said, you know, I was going through the same thing. But we're glad that you're here tonight. We're gonna have a good time. We're gonna. It's a good lesson tonight. Oh my goodness, that's the worst stuff in the world. You ever try that?
Yeah, it's gross. But I can't help it. I'm thirsty.
Okay. There's no water. We just got water. There's water right there.
But there's no ice in it.
Oh, you want something cold? Okay, I got you. That's something else. Well, if you can stomach it. Look at her.
Actually, that one is not as bad as the other one.
Yummy, and then tell me who.
That's not as bad as the other
Who bought them?
Who bought them?
I did.
You did? I should have known.
And I brought it up here because I was like, I ain't drinking that.
I should have known. Well, at least she's not drinking somebody's something
Tastes like that.
they get upset over.
So anyway, we've all been here for a little while. We've had supper and we've had a good visit tonight, and we're just going to finish it up with a little lesson tonight. I won't keep you too long again tonight. Because I don't want to rush through these picking of the disciples, and I kind of want to go through them a little bit and let you get a chance to know them if you don't know them already. Tonight's probably, these are the three that probably, there's probably four apostles that you probably all know. Name one for me, Kathy. Any of the 12 apostles. Just one.
You're asking
Just one.
Peter.
Huh?
Peter.
Peter. See, everybody knows Peter. He was the leader. He's the man. Peter. Matthew. There's another one. We just heard about him. Cadence. You know another one? That's it? Jen.
Timothy.
Okay, Paul was a later apostle, but not one of the 12 that Jesus just called. We're right here in Luke chapter 6. So,
Timothy.
But Timothy was he was later too. He's just a pastor. But so let's read it. We're in Luke chapter 6. Let's just put it up and then we'll.
Another try.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Shoot, I lost his name. Hold on.
Did you say Judas?
I forgot his name. Yeah, Judas. There
Yeah,
we go.
most people. I'm going to just say, we're going to read it and then I'm going to tell you what I think most people will say. So Luke chapter 6, and let's start in about verse 13. Luke 6:13. And when day came, he called his disciples to him, which were all the followers. That was all the people that came there. He probably had several hundred. I wouldn't doubt that at all. And he handpicked 12 of them to be in his inner circle, and he named them apostles. So these 12, they came, he called his disciples, he chose 12 of them, whom he also named as apostles. Simon, number one, first one. And Jesus changed his name to Peter, or actually just gave him an extra name, Peter. And sometimes he's called Simon, sometimes he's called Peter, sometimes he's called Simon Peter, and then sometimes he's called Cephas, which is just the Greek word for Peter. Peter is actually Aramaic and for little stone, but Cephas is the Greek word. Paul actually calls him Cephas when we get into Acts, and so he has any of those names. Simon, Peter, or Cephas, those are all the main apostle, the leader of the apostles. Who?
Hey, you.
Hey, you. I have no idea what you're talking about. And then Andrew, his brother.
Yeah.
And a lot of people know Andrew, but he's kind of one of the obscure ones. Usually when you ask people on the street to name the 12 apostles, Andrew's not usually one of them that'll pop up, but Peter definitely would be one. And then James and John, they were the sons of Zebedee, and those were the inner circle of the 12, which was his inner circle. He had an inner circle of the inner circle, and these three were very prominent: Peter, James, and John. When they went up on the mountain of transfiguration, it was Peter, James, and John. And Jesus actually showed his glory, and Moses was there talking, and Peter, when he woke up, because Peter was sleeping to start with, but just because they were like passed out, and then when he came to, he's just like, oh, how glorious this is. Let's just build a tabernacle, one for you and one for Moses and one for us, and we'll just all stay right here. Why do we ever have to leave the mountain? That's what heaven is kind of like. That's why I say people that ever went to heaven would never ever want to come back. People that talk like they've been dead for, hours, and then they come back and they act like they've been to heaven or whatever. I'll tell you right now, if they really were in heaven, that'd be the you poor thing. Look at that face. This is horrible. You would never ever want to come back, because the juice that they got up there is ice cold, and it doesn't taste anything like that. It's the most delicious thing you ever tasted. Right? It's definitely not called bubbly. All right. Simon, Peter, and Andrew, his brother, James, and John. And then Philip. Well, some people might remember Philip. Bartholomew. Bartholomew just has such a weird name that sometimes people remember the name Bartholomew, but he's not one that usually is quoted. Matthew, however, is, and Thomas. Most people remember doubting Thomas.
Yeah.
So if you think about it a little bit, people will think of Peter, and they'll think of James and John, because that's the core, and then they'll think of Matthew, because he was the tax collector, and that doubting Thomas. I remember that. And then that's usually about it, except for one other guy, which is the traitor. Almost everybody remembers the traitor. Who was the traitor? Judas, yeah. Almost everybody remembers that Judas was one of the 12 that was picked. So anyway, James, the son of Alphaeus. So there was another James, besides James, the son of Zebedee, and another Simon, who was called the Zealot, Simon the Zealot. And then Judas, the son of James. Now he's called Judas here, Judas, the son of James. But in Matthew, let's see if I've got this right. Yes, in Matthew and Mark, he's referred to as Thaddeus. So I don't know if Thaddeus' other name was Simon the Zealot, or maybe they just didn't want to use that term, the Zealot, because they called him Thaddeus the Canaanite. But it's the same guy. It's the same guy as Simon the Zealot. So many of them had two names, and Thaddeus' name was also Judas. And a lot of people think that he wanted to go by Thaddeus after all, because who wants to be remembered as Judas, right? Even Jesus' own brother's name was Judas, and he shortened it to Jude. And he wrote the book of Jude in the Bible, but he would not go by Judas. All right, and then of course Judas Iscariot, which became a traitor. Now something that you might not know, all 12 of these guys, 11 of them are from Galilee. Only one was not. Anybody know the one that was not from Galilee? Judas, the traitor. He was the only one that wasn't a Galilean. I don't know why he was there that day, but Jesus chose him because he was the son of perdition, and Jesus knew what he was going to do. He had a purpose, and he was going to serve God's purpose. And even though he felt selfish in what he did, and he did it, and it was his choice, and he showed remorse, but he did not repent, even in death. And so therefore, sad. Judas is a sad, sad story. All right, so there's our 12. Those are our 12 apostles. When I was in Sunday school, we had to memorize all them things. But even to this day, honestly, and I was trying before I actually started studying, I might be able to tell you now. I've been studying them for a long time. But it's not easy to remember the 12. And I don't know why that is. I mean, because to me, a lot of lists are really easy. But we got Peter, James, and John, and Andrew. And they're sort of they're the two sets of brothers anyway. Because you have Peter and Andrew, they were brothers, and James and John, they were brothers. And then and then I remember from James and John that you had another James, Alphaeus, and then you had another Simon. All right, so we're up to 6 now, right? Simon the Zealot. So that's 6. So then we had Thomas, and we had Bartholomew, all right, and Matthew. All right, so that's so we're up to 9, and then you had Judas Iscariot, of course. So now we're at 10. So there's 2 I'm missing, and that would be Philip, and Bartholomew. And so there you go. So there's the 12. But honestly, I can only do it because, like I said, as much as I've studied them. So, but I mean, I think it's good. After all, when we get to heaven, and we're going to be there for an eternity, and the new city, the new Jerusalem comes out, it's going to have 12 gates for us to enter the city by. And on top of those gates is going to have the name of the 12 tribes of Israel. And the foundation of each one of these is going to have a name of an apostle right there. So that's a wonderful thing. So, you know, it's kind of nice. If you don't know the names now, you'll definitely know the names by the time you get up there. All right. I don't know. It sort of reminds me a little bit of a story from 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 14:6. Put that up there for me, would you, Jen? 1 Samuel. Let's see if we can incorporate a little Old Testament into the picking of the disciples.
1 Samuel what?
14 and verse 6. We'll get to it in a minute. So let me give you a little bit of the backstory. So Saul has already messed up. He's already done the wrong thing. Samuel has come to him and said, God no longer wants you to be king of Israel. There's another that's taken your place. He didn't tell him it was David, but you know, Saul puts 2 and 2 together and figures out it's probably David. We know that Jonathan and David were very, very close. But basically, Israel is without a king right now, even though Saul is still the king. He's the king in name, but he's not commanding the army, and the Philistines are just having a heyday. They are just running over the children of Israel, and the children of Israel are not liking it. And one guy decides that he's going to make a difference. One guy makes a difference. Jonathan and his armor bearer. Jonathan and his armor bearer. I don't know if you remember the story, but they come running into the camp, and they literally walk into the Philistine camp caves. They literally just walk in. You know why? Because the Philistines thought, hey, isn't that Jonathan? He's the son of Saul. I bet he's defecting. Because Saul, we heard that Saul's not, he's on the outs with the children of Israel anyway, and his God. I bet you Jonathan is defecting. I bet he's coming down here, he's going to fight with us. So they just let him walk on into the camp. And it says when he got a half an acre in, whatever that means, he started slaying Philistines. And he had already slayed 20 of them when God caused an earthquake which rattled the rest of the Philistines. They wondered what in the world was going on. They went crazy and they all vanished. And by rattling it around, those Israelites that were hiding from the Philistines, they were in their little caves. They were all kind of jumbled out of their caves because of the... And so they start fighting with Jonathan, and they rout the Philistines and they leave. How about that? Great story, right? Mm-hmm. Look at this verse. 1 Samuel 14:6. Jonathan says this. Jonathan said to the young man who was carrying his armor, his little